What's going on, everybody? We are back, episode number 38 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight, we're going to be breaking down UFC 258. As usual, we are powered by Bet Online. You can get 50% on or 50% bonus on your first deposit up to $1,000 using the promo code Club Sub. They're the best book for UFC as it stands currently. Pretty good limits on openers. They drop props before anybody else. Just really great book, so check it out. Again, Bet Online, promo code Club Sub. Tonight, we're going to be joined by AJ. Thank you for stopping by. You can find him at AJ MMA, right? That's your Twitter handle?
That is correct. Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, and it's pretty exciting. First time on the show. And then, as usual, you got me, John Stargary MMA. You can find me on Twitter at MMA Fox. Luke at SWR_betting. Lags at Lags_the Capper. C should be joining us momentarily. And then, as you guys know, we did a bit of a giveaway, $250 to someone if Daewoo Choi won his fight. I was going to do it at the midpoint of the show. I mean, should I do it now since we're waiting on C? What do you guys think?
Let's let it fly.
We go. Yeah, I get. Yeah,
all right,
go for it.
Let me pull. Can you guys see my screen?
Mm-mm.
Well, either way, I'm just going to do it right now. So, trust me. Randomizing it now. The winner is 209 STK1. So, at 209 STK1, you are the winner of the contest. You need to have Venmo for Steve to pay you, but we will get that to you this week. I'll have him follow up with you. So, yeah, with that, we are going into it. UFC 258. We're jumping right in. We got Diego Lima taking on Belal Muhammad. Luke, what is your take here?
So very, very strong take. It's actually my very first max bet of the year. I jumped in on this one moderately early. I got 5 units on Muhammad at minus 323. My big reasoning here is obviously outside of even metrics, just in general, there are some potential, considerations in terms of metrics towards Lima, but it's really one of those fights where I feel like Muhammad has him covered in pretty much every sort of capacity and area. He's one of those guys who I classify as like a high volume point fighter, which you really don't see very often. And because of that, I feel like he's a perennial winner in doing so. He plays that range game well. He's high output, has that wrestling upside that has been able to, help win him rounds. So people might say, oh, look, I don't necessarily know how you're maxing Belal because, he's not a guy who's historically finishing. But to me, I largely think Diego Lima's probably reliant on a knockout here, but that also kind of came over Chad Laprise in his couple fights ago as well, who I think Laprise is also relatively chinny. I know Belal's been dropped a couple times, but it's also been against pretty solid comp as well, and has he been proven to be competitive? Like even that fight against Jeff Neal, 30-27, but still a moderately competitive fight. And I think a really important note in this fight is that Belal, like the narrative on Belal is that he's kind of undersized at 170, but the dude has just been fighting big guys at 170 throughout the course of his career. The Jeff Neals, the Tim Meanses, all these different guys. So I really struggle to see what the win condition of Diego Lima is, even though he's, this perennial, I guess, quote unquote, better grappler on paper, doesn't really have any sub wins, and it actually has been sub before and has been put in precarious positions on his back. And I think Belal actually has an underrated sub game as well. So I really think Belal just has him covered pretty much everywhere here. I think it's probably one of his more winnable matchups in the UFC, as he's largely been fighting perennial top 15 guys. So don't max very often, but I'm very confident in Belal to get the job done.
Lags, what do you think?
Yeah, similar sentiments to Luke. I actually threw Belal on a parlay. I have a 1 unit parlay. I'll touch on later in the card, I guess. But I love Belal. He's perfect fighter. I think, to be honest, he's that jack of all trades guy. Perfect striking, mixes in the takedowns well, and he's got solid cardio. We saw that last fight with Lima good. So, yeah, similar to Luke, I think outside of that early KO, I think Belal rolls here.
AJ?
Yeah, we were talking beforehand. Got a lot of action on this card. I'm considering more. This is another one. I like Muhammad even at 4-1. Honestly, I think there's value there.
Yeah.
I think kind of like a fluke, he wins. much better cardio than Lima. We've seen Lima slow down. We know, as Luke touched on, Bilal is just a cardio machine, a pace machine. And I am with Luke. I do think he can finish, even though like the record doesn't say it. He does take the back a lot. And we have seen Lima finished in the majority of his losses, right? And I do think this is kind of a step down for Muhammad, with all due respect to Lima. I think Lyman good. That's a really solid win, in my opinion. So like Luke said, like Lag said, I think he's got him covered everywhere. Better round winner outside of just like a one-punch knockout shot from Lima. I think Bilal's got him covered.
See, any opinion here?
No. The person who won the contest, just some random avatar?
No, they're a real person. I'm looking at their Twitter right now. I looked it up to make sure it's not a random avatar. Their Twitter tag is "fuck yo style." So,
all right, I was gonna say I saw the people in the chat saying that it's not a real person. So,
if it turns out they're not a real person, we'll rerun the contest next week. But
I say that person has to reach out to the podcast in order to claim their prize. Because if they didn't listen to it, then fuck them.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then if they don't claim their prize, we'll rerun it next week.
Well,
all right, how about that? If they don't tweet out to the podcast by the start of the card on Saturday, we rerun the contest.
fair.
The generator, yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't have any strong opinion. Bilal should be the favorite. Yeah, nothing crazy here.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I just think it's actually kind of funny because, Bilal, I would say I love Bilal. I would say usually the one issue that Bilal has is he's always kind of outclassed athletically. He's usually got a pretty good, fundamental edge in his opponents. This is probably one of the only times he's going to have a significant athletic edge, in my opinion anyway, against Diego Lima. So, yeah, I mean, I thought about parlaying him with the next fight. I didn't. I don't know if I'll lay it. I have a lot of action in this card, so it's like I don't know if I'm here to add more chalk to the action that I already have. But, yeah, I think Bilal's got him covered as well. So we move on. Next fight, we got Bobby King Green taking on Jim Miller. If you guys recall, I played Bobby Green against Thiago Moises in his last fight. After that fight, I said I will never play Bobby Green again at chalk. And yet here we are. I'm on Bobby Green at chalk here. I laid minus 259 for about 3.5 units. I took a half unit stab at Green by KO at plus 500 and a 0.25 unit stab at Green by KO in round 3 at plus 2,500. Basically, I just think he's got Miller covered wherever this fight goes pretty cleanly. Miller, again, if you've been following this pod for a while, we're all fans of Jim Miller here. Cashed him against Roosevelt Roberts. He's always real dangerous early in fights. The problem is I don't think Miller has much of a chance to knock Bobby out. He doesn't really carry much power these days. And so sub is basically, the way that he needs to go here. And Green's really a very, very good grappler. Even if Miller can get him down and get his back, you saw Moises do it, and Moises is a super credentialed Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner. And, Green just does such a good job of shutting down, hooks from getting in on him. So I just could Miller sub him? I guess theoretically, but I don't think, whereas with Roberts, I thought a Miller sub early was a very high percentage outcome. I think you're talking about this is more like 5 to 10%. And, after it gets out of the first round, we all know Miller's got a round of gas. And this is, unlike previous fights where Miller needed to gas to lose on the feet, Bobby's just a way better striker. I think he has him covered everywhere here. I think if he had beaten Moises or gotten the nod from the judges, he'd be minus 400. That's about where I cap him. So, yeah, I'm on Bobby. Luke, what do you got?
Yeah, so I think we're probably going to echo a lot of the same similar sentiments here. So I guess one thing I want to touch on, traditionally from a live betting angle, it's usually, not the sharp angle to sit there and, lay a super chalky price after one. But what I will say is I think the Jim Miller win condition is so heavily entrenched on round one here that even if we see, a moderately competitive round and you're able to grab Bobby Green minus 300, minus 350, it's one of these spots where I say just is bet as much as you can on Bobby Green after round one, if I'm being honest, just because there just hasn't been really any upside for Miller in the latter rounds. I know there was, some shaky points against Pichel, but that's also largely because I think Pichel me and C will potentially disagree with with me on this of, going to the wrestling even more heavily and also making some small mistakes. But I think Bobby Green is exponentially the better boxer here. We've seen Miller slow down. So I've considered the Bobby Green decision angle. I was on him by decision over Thiago Moises as well. That was a tough L. It was the very first time I ever bet Bobby Green, so I am a little jaded in this fight a bit, but I think Bobby Green by decision is probably the play. Pre-fight, I don't hate the round 3 stabs due to Miller slowing down. It's more so just if Bobby decides to put on the pace, but I actually think it's probably one of these live betting spots where you're probably pretty safe to lay a good amount of money, even at a chalky number after 1.
Lex, how about you?
Don't add too much because you guys kind of echoed sentiments. We all love Bobby Green here on the pod. I want him against Thiago Moises as well. He was robbed, to be honest. I was the first one to call it out.
He was robbed.
But nobody agreed with me, but it's fine. But no, and here in this matchup, I mean, similar thoughts. Jim Miller's pretty live in round 1. Outside of that, that's about it. So I like the decision play as well, but my issue is if Bobby Green does, I think there is a finish live in that 3rd round. So Bobby Green round 3 decisions -160, which isn't like a great price either. So I'm probably just going to end up staying off, but I like Bobby here.
AJ, how about you?
Yeah, you could get Bobby by points by decision at -125. I'm looking at Bet Online right now. That's probably the play. I mean, it's just like he hasn't finished the fight since 2013. Miller's really tough. And Bobby we see it. He doesn't have a whole lot of urgency to finish fights unless if you're like Orlando Viana and you're just running at him for 15 minutes and he's just countering you repeatedly. But I largely agree. I think that if there is a play for me, it would be Bobby by decision rather than his money line. So, yeah, Bobby Green.
There. C, how about you?
Yeah, I played Bobby Green by 3rd round knockout, and I have some knockout. I kind of just figure if there's any time for Bobby Green to finish, it's first Miller. Yeah, I don't really think that a Miller sub's too much in play. I guess it'd be more like a club and sub. Yeah, Green kind of just hasn't covered everywhere. Cardio desk going to be a real thing for Miller here. So taking some chances on the round 3 knockouts, like plus 2,600 when I got it, I think the other day, 2 days ago, wherever the fuck I got it. Are we going invert? What's the order of this? Was I late? I don't know.
No. I'm just going by what Topology has, so I'm starting from the bottom and going up.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. Anyway, next fight, we got Ricky Simon taking on Brian Kelleher. Luke, I'll start with you. What do you got?
Yeah, so just moved in on a play yesterday for this. I got 2 units on Simone by decision at -120. Originally, it was a play that I was thinking I might stay off of just because of the whole Kelleher guillotine scenario. But after like doing more of a deep dive into tape, we've kind of talked about it too, John, that I feel like he does defend those guillotines well. And if you actually look statistically, Kelleher actually isn't a guy who's attempting a ton of subs. It's more so when he's got those guillotines, it's been off the first try. And so I think despite also Kelleher not being a guy who's been grinded out historically, I think Simone brings the perfect style to do that to him as well. I know people might reference like the Cody Stamann fight where Stamann, only landed a couple takedowns, didn't get a ton of control time, I guess. But my angle on that fight is in Stamann being largely a pretty solid grinder, that Stamann had a ton of success with his hands in that fight. So there was no real reason for him to grind in that spot because he was winning the stand-up. But with Ricky, I think he will go to the takedowns here. Kelleher is going to bring some pressure. As long as Ricky doesn't just go like life or death and, get clipped at some point or doesn't get, guillotined off one of those entries, I think it's really a solid spot for him. And so instead of, laying -250 on it, I'd rather take him by his most likely win condition, despite Kelleher actually losing in his 4 UFC losses inside the distance. But I don't think in this spot that pays a ton of credence. So I think it's better to just play Simone by his most likely win condition.
Lex, how about you?
Yeah, so when this fight was first booked, I was actually pretty interested in actually playing Brian inside the distance at like plus 370, plus 400, what it was. And then watching the Barella fight with Simone, I was like, all right, well, he could probably do the same thing with Kelleher. He looked, more improved, solid fighter, to be honest. But I think he plays around too much on the feet, and Brian hits hard as fuck, so I think that the finish is live for him, but I see the path to victory for Ricky also, so I think it's just a good path for me, to be honest. But I think Brian's live, to be honest.
AJ, what are your thoughts?
I mostly agree with Lags. When these two were first booked, Ricky was the favorite, but he wasn't this big of a favorite, and it's just another example of recency bias. And, again, I like Ricky to win. I think he could have success with the leg kicks. Luke mentioned he could have success with the takedowns, but, man, I would not lay this price on Ricky in this matchup. Again, he probably goes out there and wins, but Brian's a solid wrestler. He's got solid cardio. He's been tested against Stamen, other guys in the division. He fights at a high pace as well. So again, as far as the pick goes, I'm not really going out on a limb with picking Simone, but as far as a bet goes, I'm going to pass on this fight.
See, how about you?
Yeah, I played Kelleher at plus 220. The first time I played him at plus 150, so I don't think that there's enough to swing that by 75 cents just because Ricky finished, some regional European dude. Yeah, mostly, if you're playing Ricky, I'd say 75% of his win condition is basically a decision. So minus 120 on that, you probably have a decent value. But I think, with Kelleher, haven't necessarily seen him controlled on the mat much, and getting him down. It'll be interesting. I think, the guillotine's pretty fucking live. I think it's more live than probably most of you guys in here, but I got some shots on the round one sub, plus 2,900, and I have submission plus 900. I think there's also the possibility that Kelleher just wins a decision. He gets back up. He wins more on damage than Ricky. It's possible those sequences, even if he's getting taken down a bunch, if he's, damaging, landing some big hits like Borg, you could swing rounds. I don't think Ricky should be that big of a favorite. And I like Kelleher round one submission. I think he gets it done. Even Aljo talked about going up against Kelleher and how difficult it is, even knowing, the guillotine's there. Actually, I think Aljo said he thinks that 90% of the time Kelleher lands the guillotine. So we'll see.
Yeah, fair. I'm considering a play on Ricky decision, to be honest. First time it was booked, I actually had planned to play the Ricky about minus 180 there. But it's not really any secret that I'm higher on Simon than most. I think the guy has faced a murderer's row for the first 7 fights of his career. And he frankly just has a style that I'm very partial to. He's very active on the feet, and, the willingness to attempt takedowns and the kind of volume he does. It's just going to win a lot of fights by default. I'm pretty sure he can get Kelleher down. The question is whether or not he can avoid the sub. My personal take is he probably can. Does a real good job on passing on entries, even though he can put his head a bit deep at times. But yeah, I don't have much more analysis to add. I kind of view the line now as more or less right. To C's point, I think a big portion of that win condition is decision. So I haven't played it yet, but I'm thinking about it. So we move on. We got fun little fight in the women's ladies 125. We got Jillian Robertson taking on Miranda Maverick. AJ, I saw you have a bet here. You want to start here?
Yes, sir. Yeah. I like Jillian. I am impressed with Miranda, and I think she has the potential to get a lot better, but there is a lot of regional footage of her that I think Jillian could exploit. It's a risk. Maybe she's improved in the meantime, but there is evidence of her pulling guard, struggling to scramble off her back, taken down, get controlled, get reversed while she's in top position. And we know Jillian's a very good MMA grappler. She's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. She actively competes in grappling bouts. She's a good chain wrestler. She could take you down from the body lock, from caught kicks. So I really like that she's got the fight IQ to want to get the fight to the ground. Miranda's got the advantage striking. But what I like about Jillian is she's all the way in or all the way out, trying to take you down when she's all the way in. And I think she will be able to take Miranda down and either control her, or maybe get a finish. I like her top control pressure, utilizes that daggy steady handcuff that Paul Felder talks about. And yeah, I think she's worth the underdog price. And just also another intangible thing, I guess, she's just much more UFC experienced. I was on Tyler Santos against her, but this is just a far different matchup for me, to be honest. So I'm on Jillian here. I think she wins.
See, any opinion here? Maverick, Jillian?
Yeah, I played. I just took some stabs at Maverick knockout. I think Jillian should likely be the favorite, just kind of on principle. But I more so just played Maverick by knockout because I kind of think that if she's kind of covering her price, she's landing. She's keeping it on the feet, and I think Jillian probably has some of the worst reactions at 125 that I've seen from like getting hits. So plus 500, I'm cool with it. I do think Jillian, more upside, should probably be the favorite, slight favorite. But I'm kind of just willing to take anybody 5-1 or better versus Jillian via knockout. So just kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, fair. I don't hate that. To be honest, this has kind of been a tough fight for me to break down, and it's one I've had a hard time getting a read on. Miranda, early in her Invicta days, looked really, really poor on her back, especially her first fight with Deanna Bennett. She hasn't hit the mat on her back a whole lot since then. She seems to be a capable offensive grappler. I kind of agree with C. It opened Jillian like plus 150, and I was hoping it would get up to like plus 185 Jillian with the kind of like love Miranda got. Unfortunately, it never really moved in that direction. The frustrating thing for me is, and what not really sure about is, has Miranda made those improvements on her back? And I don't really know. I have a suspicion that this could look a lot like the Santos fight, where Miranda just completely outmuscles her, and because she is an offensive grappler, maybe grounds Jillian and just the same thing, just dominates her that way. I like Jillian's game. I like how aggro she is with her takedown attempts. I like how aggressive she is in top position. But, the biggest hole in her game is really just kind of a lack of athleticism. And I'm not sure that can be made up. But on the other hand, if Miranda hasn't improved that, Jillian could potentially maul her here. And so I'm not really sure. Like, she's made other improvements elsewhere that lead me to believe she might have. Certainly would not even consider playing the juice on her here. But it's a hard fight for me to read, to be honest. Luke, any thoughts for you?
Yeah, originally going into this, I thought I would be taking the dog shot on Jillian for a lot of the reasons you guys mentioned. More battle tested, more experienced. Despite me actually thinking her wrestling is a tad overrated, at least from like a technical perspective, she still lands takedowns in high volume and she manages to get them. But I guess my big reason why I stayed off, and I actually think Maverick wins this fight, Miranda Maverick is just a really, really strong, physically imposing type girl. And obviously, you guys touched on the Santos fight, maybe it's not fair to make that direct comparison here, but as you touched on too, John, I feel like that is a potential outcome here where Miranda Maverick is able to just land takedowns and be defensively responsible on top. Like, I feel like she is a brown belt in jiu-jitsu or a purple belt in jiu-jitsu. So, it is her base. And one thing I will say about Maverick is that she's made a consistent effort to improve the striking component of her game. She moved to a Muay Thai gym like 2 or 3 years ago. And I think C kind of touched on it, at least with his flyer on the knockout. I think just the physicality difference between them is very evident, but to any sort of Jillian points as well. I really don't hate the Jillian bets because Jillian lands takedowns. And what have we seen, from Maverick off her back? You have to go back a little bit. Hasn't looked particularly great. So I get that. So it's just one of these spots where I'm kind of willing to just stay off. But I think Maverick actually impresses here. I think it's an okay spot for her, obviously, assuming she's able to stay upright, because I think she's got a pretty clear striking edge.
Lags, have you?
Yeah, similar sentiments to C here. I favor Maverick on the feet here. I think she's probably going to be able to get a knockout here, but to the same coin. I think that obviously we haven't really seen her on her back lately, so tough to really pay juice in this big step up in competition. So similar to Luke, I'm passing here, and I think it's a fine pass, but I don't hate the Jillian bets also.
All right, we move on. We got Rodolfo Vieira taking on Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. Luke, I'll start with you. What do you got?
Yep, moved in on a bet for this one the other day. I'm on the under 1.5 rounds at -150 for a unit and a half. I don't think there's like an in-depth breakdown that really needs to be had here. I think it's a pretty binary fight, to be honest. Obviously, Vieira is probably one of the best grapplers in the world right now, regardless of weight class, at least in terms of jiu-jitsu. But from what we have seen since he transitioned to MMA back in 2017, he's not one of these guys. He's out here trying to test his stand-up. He knows what his base is. He's going to go to it. And actually, for a jiu-jitsu guy, I will say his wrestling, I think, is actually pretty good. Not to mention the fact that I don't know how this guy makes 185 pounds. He's an absolute monster. He's strong, positionally aware, obviously on top. But what I like too is that, he's not your potentially, MMA based grappler, maybe like a Brendan Allen or a GM3 who's, more aggressive in terms of potentially, attacking stuff to lose stuff. He's just very sound and technical in what he does. He's also a guy who I think will open up with strikes to set up his subs, which is something we don't always see from, these jiu-jitsu guys that come over to the MMA world. So I think he's pretty sound in that. So essentially we know what we're going to get from Vieira. I think 5 of his 7 pro MMA fights have hit the under 1.5. I think overall between both guys since 2016, their under 1.5s hit roughly 72% of the time. So we're getting just roughly a 10% edge based on Soul statistics. And I still also think from like a tertiary consideration that I think Vieira is probably live to get knocked out at some point because I just don't think his striking defense is very good. Hernandez brings heat on the feet. And Vieira's gotten beaten up in a couple fights. His eye was all blown up against, I believe it was Safarov. He was cut in a couple other fights too. So that's just kind of a small little component there. But I'd be honestly pretty shocked if Hernandez survives 5 minutes with this guy, even though he has, a jiu-jitsu background too. But it's just kind of a levels kind of fight. So at 60%, I love it.
Flags up here.
Yeah, I'm also with Luke here. I'm on the under 1.5, -160 for a unit. Yeah, I think Hernandez's best shot is try to blitz Vieira, try to knock him out early, honestly, because other than that, I think you're going to be able to dominate him, take him to the mat and submit him. I think this is, first round, second round finish for him.
AJ?
Yeah, I'll compete the trifecta with the under. I need to really just see I really just needed to see the Marcus Perez fight with Vieira, where he was taken down from the bottom block. He got his back taken. Until he runs into like a Tavares or a Vittori or a Whitaker, a guy with really solid defensive grappling, I'm just most likely not going to be picking against this guy. And I guess to add more to the reasoning, obviously it's better to lay -140 than say -400. But I also like Luke's point about the stats. It is a levels fight. I mean, yeah, Hernandez is another black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but we know Vieira is the black belt hunter. He's been submitting black belts in MMA ever since the inception of his career. So I'm all over Vieira to win, and I'm all over the under as a bet.
See, how are you? You're muted.
Yeah, I think in order for Vieira to cover his price, he pretty much needs a round 1 submission, or just round 1 finish. I don't have like a strong take. I think Vieira gets it done inside of 7.5 minutes. If not, he's probably fucked because I think he's just going to gas. But
Yeah, I'm kind of with C. I don't mind the play on the under. I have some major questions about Vieira. I don't think this is the spot he gets exposed, though. I think the line is more or less right on point. I kind of think every takedown.
Old John would have played Hernandez here.
No, Old John tried to make the case for Hernandez, but I couldn't do it. The thing is, I really wanted to bet him, and then it's like you look at the Brendan Allen fight. Allen takes him down and passes his guard like it's nothing. The Marcus Perez fight, I just sort of think pretty much every time Vieira lands a takedown, he's almost like 50% to finish the fight off one takedown. And so it's like, can Hernandez sprawl and brawl? I haven't really seen much to suggest that. I actually don't think he's got very good takedown defense at all. And so it's like, I agree with C. If it goes past 7.5 minutes, it likely means something's got very wrong for Vieira, and Hernandez can maybe win then. I think it's something maybe, if Hernandez does survive and the over hits, you look at something live after round 2. But yeah, I mean, I'm with all you guys. Like, I think Vieira is a better wrestler than most jiu-jitsu specialists. His jiu-jitsu is obviously super dangerous, and like I said, I think pretty much every time he lands a takedown, it's about 50-50 whether or not he's going to sub him. So, yeah, I think the line's right, but no play for me. And so we move on. We got Gifted Gabe Green taking on Philip Rowe. See, you want to hit this? See? Okay, C's on the phone. I will AJ, you want to start here?
Yeah, sure thing. I'm actually on the under for this fight. I think they're both just going to swing, to be honest. Like, Green's durability looked a lot better against D-Rod, but he's been knocked out twice on the regionals. And, like, I'm just not ready to assume, like, a guy's flaws are automatically fixed after one fight. I mean, it's a good sign that was his most recent fight, and it was, like, his first fight in a couple years. But I still – with a guy like Rowe, who's very athletic, a lot longer, hits really hard, I wouldn't be, I guess, shocked to see maybe the flaws that Green showed on the regionals to pop back up again. But I am more on him. I think he's the better technical fighter. I think he's got the more varied tools on the feet. I was really impressed with his cardio and his pressure against D-Rod. And I don't know how Rowe is going to react to that. I think Rowe's just largely a guy that's just like, I'm going to try and knock you out in a round. And if not, it's like the game plan just kind of falls apart. We saw him struggle with Shabazian on the Contender Series. He was almost knocked out. Obviously, he's the bigger guy. He's athletic. Maybe in this time off, he's improved. But I'm going to go with Gabe Green here as far as a pick. But I really think the under is a solid spot.
See, how about you?
Yeah, I don't hate the under. I played Rowe. I think Rowe has more upside, just in general. I think this is like one of those fights where one of the sides, like in hindsight, probably looks like a pretty significant favorite. My thing is more that just like I've seen Green struggle with length, and I do think that Rowe, he can use his length well. I mean, it's like a significant reach advantage, significant height advantage. What is it, like 5 inches? Yeah, I mean those are like pretty significant just things to overcome. I kind of like Rowe. I think he's got quick hands. He does hold his hands low. But if he could start to, if he starts walking you down, he's dangerous. Green does come forward, pressures, throw some kicks, could disturb Rowe. Don't hate the under. Green, they're both pretty hittable, but, it's going to be a lot easier for Rowe to tee off on Green than it is Green to tee off on Rowe. And I think Rowe has a little bit of grappling upside if it hits the mat. So yeah, I mean, I played Rowe for like 1.5 units, I think. But yeah, that line's continuing to get a little bit wider. And I have some Rowe by sub. So yeah.
Yeah, so I actually had some interest in Green when it was evens. I was like, maybe it'll move to dog money and I'll be able to get on him there. I don't really have any interest in playing him as a favorite. I think with Green, I like his process a bit more. He's got more volume. He's going to go forward. The problem is, you can have a better process, but, if Green had just demonstrated a capability to kind of slip inside, work his way into the pocket and trade, consistently, I would be happy to jump on him here. The problem is he gets hit so much. I like D-Rod. I think everyone in this pod, likes D-Rod, but let's be real. He's not some elite technical striker, and he was just teeing off on Green pretty much at will. And so it's for me to lay juice with somebody like that who probably doesn't have a grappling advantage, I have to trust that he's not just going to eat punches in the face to get into distance. And, AJ, you touched on it a bit. He's been KO'd regionally. And so ultimately, I don't like Rowe here, but I'm certainly not going to play Green as a favorite when, closing that distance is going to cause some issues. He's shown issues with length before, and he's pretty reliable to get hit in the face over and over closing distance. So yeah, I think Green's my pick, but I don't see much value on it myself. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so for me, this is kind of the definition of a volatile type fight. I think a couple of you guys touched on it, where I think either guy could potentially look, like massive value, but I feel like the data, at least recently, in terms of Green, is moderately limited. And then I still don't 100% know what to make of Rowe, but I actually do somewhat like Rowe actually in this spot, just because I feel like he's one of these guys that could potentially be a solid UFC fighter, but there just isn't a whole lot of data out there to suggest that yet. Brown belt in jiu-jitsu, obviously C touched on, has power, more athletic, definitely the bigger guy here. And one thing, at least in terms of Green, I did have a big bet on D-Rod over him in his debut. And Green did outperform my expectations 100%. He got 30-27, but that was a pretty competitive 30-27 is what I will say. So it's kind of what you touched on for me, John, is the crux of why I like Rowe here. He knows he has to get inside here. He's going to take shots. Like, he's just not a guy, in my opinion, who closes distance effectively. So I think he's very live to get sparked. And to C's point, I actually do think Rowe has a grappling edge if this fight does hit the.
Right, how about you?
So similar to a fight later on the main card, I think that it's going to be like a fun fight, but I think, to be honest, the under's like kind of a trap. So that I don't know. That's kind of my only thoughts, to be honest. I'm not really interested in the side here, but I think the under would be the play. But I just think, like, there's this gut feeling that it just goes over.
Yeah. Next up, we got Viana taking on Mallory Martin. C, I know you have a bet here. What do you got?
Yeah, I played Viana plus 145. I played some of the under. Played Viana sub and sub one. I played a little bit of knockout just because I thought the number was off. I got a little bit of everything here. Yeah, I mean, maybe Martin grinds her, but I'm not too particularly high on Mallory. I mean, Hannah Cypher's pretty much on the feet was looking like, Floyd Mayweather versus Martin. Even in the grappling, I mean, I guess maybe, the path for Martin is really kind of just controlling her on the mat. But I don't know. I think Viana finishes her, and I think there's a better case for Viana to be a slight favorite. Kind of view her as like 60%. And I think if you're playing Mallory, I'd probably – I don't know what the decision line is, but my preference would be Mallory by decision if you're playing her. But, yeah, I think there's still a good amount of value on Viana. I mean, she's like plus 127 right now or something. So, and I think those sub numbers are pretty out of whack. Inside the distance in general, it's good on Viana's side.
Yeah, I'm on Viana as well. I played the money line for a unit of plus 144. The thing is, like with Martin, and until I see her demonstrate that she can control on top against a decent submission grappler and not get put in trouble, it's hard for me to rely on her. Like, it was a while ago, but you go back and watch her fight with Macy Barber in LFA, and Barber basically, she kept taking Barber down, and Barber just obliterated her from guard with like no issue at all. And in the time since, I don't think Martin's really demonstrated great top control. She landed 5 takedowns on contenders and basically won on grappling optics, but she got lit up on the feet in that fight. To C's point, Cypher's absolutely lit her up. And, given some of the issues she's had in the past with jiu-jitsu practitioners, I'm not sure, completely sold, regardless of what she says in interviews, that she's going to go wrestling heavy here. And, I favor Viana pretty heavily on the feet. And, if Martin does take her down a bunch, she could, but I think it's going to be a dicey proposition. We've seen Viana win rounds off her back before. Now, I hate the fact that she's a guard player, but I do think she has the opportunities to put her in real danger in guard. And so ultimately, look, like, I capped it even. It's hard for me to make Viana a favorite, just given that Martin could conceivably land 5 or 6 takedowns in this fight. I don't think she's going to ever be safe on the mat here. And standing, I favor Viana pretty dramatically. So yeah, I'm on her here. Luke, how about you?
So not like a contrarian take by any means necessarily, but because I was originally looking to play the under 2.5 at like plus 200. But honestly, I think Martin is going to come with the correct game plan here, which some may disagree with. But I think she's going to come out here and I think she's going to land takedowns. I think she's going to get a lot of top time, and I think she's going to win this fight on the cards. So we'll see. Not a super confident take because I actually do give more credence to Viana probably just outstriking her on the feet. But I also think she is actually more defensively responsible on top than some of the other girls that she's guard subbing. I mean, she just did receive her brown belt. So once again, I still don't. I'm not in like Mallory Martin camp per se, but it's just. It was a spot, like I said, I wanted to play the under 2.5 for some more defensive irresponsibility, but I don't think it's there in this fight. I think Martin takes the correct game plan and wins the fight, but definitely not laying minus 140 on it.
Lex, how about you?
Yeah, actually, similar, exact same thoughts as Luke. To be honest, I was about to play the under 2.5 as well, and I see the path to victory for Martin, so that's kind of why I'm laying off here. I'm just not too high on Viana in general. I do think she has the path to victories on the feet and can submit her on the ground, but I don't know. I'm not really trusting a guard player like you were touching on, John.
How about you, AJ?
One of the biggest betting sweats in my life was last fight when Mallory Martin was first. I had her inside the distance there. It happens. But anyways, pertaining to this matchup, my issue with Martin is like, yeah, she's a wrestler. I agree with you guys. Yeah, maybe if she wants to take her down, she can. And Viana is willing to play that guard game, but Martin goes for large phases without even attempting a takedown. Like she might just be like, I'm just going to stand on the feet with this girl. And I will give Viana a lot of credit, even though we saw her just very limited last time out against Whitmire. She actually showed better head movement. She actually like tucked her chin and showed like better technical striking, which she just didn't show before. She's got 4 inches of reach. I think she's more dangerous than Martin on the feet. So I do think for me, it's a pass matchup. I do think Viana is live to win. I don't think she will guard sub Martin. I think Martin can. If she wants to take Viana down, she probably can. We saw Cyphers get top control pressure on Viana. We also saw the same thing with JJ Aldrich. So Martin most likely can as well. But on the feet, I think it could get really dicey for Martin. So I'm staying away from it.
Yeah, fair. Completely understand that. We move on. Got a real fun fight it's going to be a catchweight. We got Andre Ewell, Chris Gutierrez, 140 pounds. If I'm not mistaken, you have a play here, AJ?
I do not.
Okay, well, go take it away anyway.
Awesome. I like Chris here. I will say this. If he hits dog money, which there's a chance, I have seen a lot of Ewell love out there. I will consider Chris. I think he's got it in the striking department, to be honest. I mean, we know Ewell's got this enormous reach advantage like he typically does, but he doesn't do the best job of controlling range. Yes, he's a boxer. He throws some straight punches, but the dude never throws kicks. We saw Martinez just chew his leg up. We know Chris will go to that over and over again. He's got a leg kick finish for crying out loud. I think he's the better striker in terms of being less predictable, more defensively sound. And that honestly should be enough for him to win. I guess my one worry with Chris would just be he is kind of content to not pressure, stay at a distance a bit. But training at that camp with Jonathan Martinez, James Krause, those guys, maybe they just create more urgency with him, to pressure. So I'm on Chris here. I'll be monitoring that line. I think he's the rightful favorite, and I think he's the side.
See, how about you?
Yeah, I didn't look into this, and I don't really care. I think Chris. I'm not a fan of Gutierrez, but feels okay. And no opinions.
All right, yeah. I actually thought I was going to play Ewell before I looked into it, and I'm kind of an Andre Ewell truther. I'm of the mind that if he ever cleaned up the cardio issue and figured out how to even grapple half competently, he'd probably be a top 15 fighter. Unfortunately, it seems like he's shown no interest in doing either of those things. And taping the fight, it's just if you told me Ewell was going to go forward and force big exchanges in the pocket, I'd be very confident that he lights Gutierrez up. You look at round 3 of the De Freitas fight, when De Freitas realized his leg was just going to fall off his body if he didn't start going forward, he absolutely pieced Gutierrez up in that 3rd round. The problem is we just really haven't seen, Ewell ever implement that kind of game plan. He's content to kind of sit back at range, dart in and out, use his length, and that's really it. And given how boxing heavy he is, he's very heavy on the lead leg. We saw Jonathan Martinez give him some issues here. And unlike Martinez, Gutierrez can kick with both legs. And so, I guess what I'm getting at is I think Ewell has the tools to win this fight if he decides to bite the mouthpiece and go forward, but we haven't seen him do that. And so my gut is Gutierrez is probably just going to obliterate his legs. I don't think it'll be quite like the Vincent Morales fight because obviously Ewell will throw strikes back at him. He's not just going to sit there and let him kick him. But I just don't think Ewell has the kind of aggressive nature necessary to, take away those tools from Gutierrez. So no play for me, but yeah, I think Gutierrez is going to win. Luke, how about you?
So unlike C, I'm actually kind of the other way. I am kind of a Chris Gutierrez truther. I like him. I like his game in general. And per our boy Magic, apparently I am Chris Gutierrez's long lost brother. So let us know in the comments, guys, if me and El Guapo, I might have had to thin up my guy a little bit and get back to my Colombian roots, which I don't have. But all right, let's jump into the matchup real quick. I'm kind of with your sentiment too, John, where I think if you told me that Andre Ewell was just going to go forward and really put the pace on Gutierrez, I think that's a really great style to beat how he fights because he plays, in my opinion, that point fighting game really well. Fights from both stances. He can kick across the calf from both legs as well. Near side, far side. And it's effective. We even saw let's throw the Morales fight out the window for 2 seconds. If you even go back and watch the McDonald fight, really debilitated that guy's leg over the course of the fight, which significantly limited how he was able to provide output over the course of the fight as well. He's done it in a couple other fights too. So I guess that's kind of my thing with Ewell. I don't think that Gutierrez is necessarily going to just calf kick him to death necessarily, aka Vince Morales fight, but I feel like it's a fight where he'll be able to bank enough of those kicks early on because Ewell doesn't check. There's multiple data points that suggest that with multiple fights. If you look at the Nathaniel Wood fight, Wood had a ton of success there. Even most recently, a fight that he won against Irwin Rivera. Irwin Rivera went 18 for 18 on kicks. He just doesn't check at all, even in Henan Barao to a certain extent as well. So I think I don't want to say it's a good spot for Gutierrez because, like I said, if Ewell just comes forward and brings that pressure, I think that limits more so the kicking game. But it's more so of Gutierrez being able to bank early. And I actually think it's probably one of the better live betting spots of the card because we might see a moderately competitive round. But if you're able to kind of pick up on that, Gutierrez is banking those kicks. We have seen Ewell's output significantly drop from multiple fights and multiple opponents when those kicks are starting to land. His movement drops, his output drops. So I think Gutierrez, you might be able to get a solid price on him after round one. If pre-fight he drops down to evens, I'm jumping in personally. I don't like I said, I don't love him here, but I feel like he has a very clear path.
Lex, how about you?
Yeah, Gutierrez here as well. I'm just kind of echoing you guys' thoughts. I'm just waiting for the line to drop down a little bit more, to be honest, because I think there are paths for Ewell in this fight, but I think more often than not, he's going to end up just at range getting his leg chewed off, to be honest. And I would also trust the durability of Gutierrez over Ewell in those pocket exchanges. So I wouldn't exactly favor him there, but yeah, I think this is a solid fight for Gutierrez.
Yeah, and we move on. Lex, going to stick with you. We got Ian Heinisch, Kelvin Gastelum. What do you got?
Yeah, so this is actually the first prop I talk about in my prop article this week. Go check it out on our Club and Sub Twitter account. I'm playing Ian Heinisch by decision at plus 400. I have a little quarter unit bet on that. Yeah, I think we can all agree in his last two fights, Kelvin's been pretty underwhelming and pretty, just seemingly uninterested. And so I think that there is a path to victory for Ian here. Just to be a more active fighter, work that clinch, maybe work in a takedown or two here. And yeah, I like Ian. I think plus 400 is kind of crazy because I trust the durability of Ian. Even though Kelvin's a solid power puncher, we haven't really seen him finish anybody lately. It's mostly these over the hill, like almost retired fighters, Michael Bisping. So yeah, I like Ian in decision. And then to close out my parlay with Bilal, I have this fight to go the distance at minus 185. So close up parlay at plus 107.
AJ, what do you got here?
I do understand Lags' angle. I am kind of worried about Gastelum's lack of discipline that he's had kind of all these years. He's obviously a guy that, probably should be fighting at welterweight, but, the lack of discipline with the diet kind of moves him up to middleweight. And now we've seen him lose 3 consecutive fights. Just looking at the timeline of events, I do really question where he's at. And I do think the UFC is kind of giving him this matchup to hey, if you want to keep your job, you should be able to beat Heinisch. You're a better fighter than him on paper. But with Heinisch, if you're investing in Heinisch, you know that this guy is hungry. He's going to come in and give his 100% effort. Whereas Gastelum, we don't know that. I question where he's at, to be honest. Heinisch is more physical. We've seen Gastelum struggle with grapplers in the past, the Weidmans, even the Magny fight to some extent. Heinisch hasn't shown to be that guy to kind of just take you down and lay on you for multiple minutes. But again, a motivated Ian and improving Ian. I like the work that he's doing at Tiger Muay Thai, Factory X Muay Thai. I think he's live. I wouldn't be shocked to see Ian pull off the upset. Potentially we're seeing a decline here with Kelvin Gastelum, not so much athletically, but mentally. So I understand the love for Ian Heinisch, though I am picking Kelvin Gastelum to win.
Yeah, fair. See, how about you?
I don't care too much about this, but I think Heinisch his striking defense is pretty meh. I don't trust KG much, but I think he's the better striker. Would I lay minus 200 on Kevin? No. Would I don't want to bet Ian at all. KG by knockout is interesting. I think it's plus 550. Just because I think Ian has some holes defensively, and KG can hit a little bit, so it's worth a stab probably. But yeah, I don't have a super strong opinion. It's mostly just a pass.
Yeah, I feel similarly. So this is the worst fighter that Kelvin Gastelum has fought in, I don't know, 4 years.
5 years.
And,
5 years.
Yeah, and I do think, in terms of ability, I think Gastelum is a far, far, far better striker than Heinisch is. What gets me with him, though, is just Gastelum seeming utter disinterest since the Adesanya fight and really doing anything on the feet. I bet Till against him, and I really didn't expect that fight to devolve into Gastelum kind of just having a staring contest. I know that's Till's MO, but Gastelum I expected to be pretty reliable to go forward. And he did. And so it's do I want to lay minus 220 on Gastelum? Not really. I think Heinisch could maybe win this fight just on enthusiasm alone. And then also, even though I don't think he'll ever do it because he hasn't just shown reliable to do it, Heinisch can wrestle, and Gastelum's not the best defensive grappler ever. But at the end of the day, I think this is a levels type fight. Gastelum's fought far better competition throughout his career to date. This is a step down for him. It's a fight, really, if he's going to continue to fight at a high level and be in the top 10, that he should win, honestly. And ultimately, I just kind of think in boxing exchanges he's going to pretty much have his way. And like C said, I haven't played it, but I think the plus 550 on Gastelum knockout is kind of intriguing. Gastelum hits really hard, and Heinisch is kind of hilariously hittable. But, yeah, no play for me. Luke, do you have any thoughts here?
Yeah, so honestly, I see merit to, I think, every single one of your guys' points on the fight, which is why I'm not playing it. But from Lags' perspective of that plus 400 decision, I actually think from a value perspective, that's probably the best way to play this fight, based on the fact that, Kelvin, as you guys touched on, isn't, the most active guy necessarily. But to John's point and C's point as well, I have massive issues with the defensive striking of Ian Heinisch too. So, we'll see. I'm not necessarily trying to lay, minus 230 on Gastelum, but is pass for me.
You remember when Ian Heinisch was a favorite against Derek Brunson?
Yeah. Well, I want to touch on that just real quick too, because if you look at the Brunson and Akhmedov fights, Brunson, he's an explosive guy, but I still don't think Brunson is a great striker by any means. Akhmedov is more of your rock'em sock'em robot hook kind of guy. I think Gastelum's striking is actually better than both of those guys personally from like a technical perspective. I think those left hands those straight left hands are going to be there all day for Gastelum from a countering perspective. So C might have an interesting angle on the Calvin knockout despite Heinisch being durable. But Heinisch, if you actually go back regionally, Heinisch will wrestle 2 more so than he has in the UFC. So to
be fair, Ian had Brunson in deep shit with that head kick. Like his career trajectory is totally changed if he knocks out Brunson there.
Yeah, that's quick as shit though, and pretty fluky if I'm being honest.
No, I agree. I'm just saying in general. I mean, you're looking at Ian like in a top 10 matchup.
I hear you, bro. I like Ian, but I think I'm gonna kind of side with I'm gonna kind of side with John here, and I think it's kind of a levels kind of fight.
Moving on, we got Julian Marquez making his return after about 2.5, 3 years off. I don't know. It's been a while. Taking on Maki Pitolo. I took the stab on Pitolo plus 150, to be honest. This is probably going to look great until Pitolo dies. But, I mean, honestly, I just think he's the far more skilled fighter, which I know is crazy because it's Maki Pitolo. But, like, Pitolo's a decent boxer. Like, he was pretty cleanly outstriking Darren Stewart, in their fight until he dove into a guillotine. He was keeping his fight with Impa was fairly close until Impa was basically just kind of able to run away on pace. Look, do I think he's ever going to threaten the top 15, top 20, top 25? No. But I think Pitolo's got legit UFC level boxing. He keeps a fairly high pace, whereas Marquez is remarkably hittable. He's not a very accurate striker either. If you look at Marquez's fights, he was getting his ass kicked by Phil Hawes until Hawes death-gassed. Stewart was pretty much outstriking him and winning that fight until Stewart dove into a guillotine. And then Alessio Di Chirico, landed over 50% of his strikes and beat him pretty cleanly as well. I just don't think Marquez is a good minute winner, and I'm pretty confident here that Pitolo is going to win minutes fairly easily. But, look, he's a dog for a reason. Obviously Pitolo has never been the most durable guy in the world. Marquez hits pretty hard. Him finishing Pitolo wouldn't be shocking. Him randomly getting better wouldn't be shocking. And then, of course, it's almost too obvious. We saw it with Darren Stewart, but, Pitolo dove into that guillotine against Stewart, and we know pretty much every time you try to take down Marquez, he looks for the guillotine. And, actually, I think Marquez submission is about plus 1,000, which I haven't played, but I think is somewhat interesting. But, yeah, look, I know – I am not a fan of Maki Pitolo, but I think I respect his game a bit more than most people. I just think he's a decent boxer, and I think if he doesn't get finished, that's probably going to be enough here. So yeah, I have a 1 unit play on him. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so if you guys have been listening to this podcast for a while, I am not a Maki Pitolo guy historically, but to John's credit, I actually did give some potential credence in playing him in this spot because conversely, I am not a Julian Marquez guy either. He's another one of these, rock'em sock'em robot guys, who's going to get into these big firefights, relies on his chin, is very durable, obviously has power. But so I guess this is why I'm staying off of Maki. It's because I don't know how Maki is going to approach this fight. Because actually, if you look at Maki's last 2 fights against Stewart, and Impa, despite taking L's in both of those fights, I thought we saw a more conservative, better Maki than we actually have historically. It's these points in these Maki fights where I think he's actually fighting technical. And to John's point, I actually think his boxing is pretty good. It's when he wants to fight, these more technical type exchanges. But then he kind of also just at times will also just throw shit out the window and keep swinging, not move his head, gets clipped, gets backed up. Like I can't get the Callan Potter fight out of my head for Maki Pitolo personally. So that's kind of my thing. But from like a betting perspective, actually my angle on this fight is I haven't bet this personally because it's going to be a sweaty one. But I think the over 1.5 at around like minus 160 is probably the play here. Obviously, both guys hit hard, have finishing upside, but both guys, man, can take a shot. If you look at the shots that Maki Pitolo took against Impa Kasanganay, kind of feel like it's also hard for Marquez to potentially finish him here. And Marquez has also shown crazy durability as well. So I respect anyone taking the shot on Pitolo here, but it's also, I think, a bit of a flyer in terms of trying to assess how he approaches the fight, in my opinion. So if I was to bet this fight, I like the over 1.5, but the price is starting to get a little chalked up.
Alex, how about you?
So this is the other fight I was talking about earlier in the prelims, that I like the under 2.5 here, but I also think that it's kind of a trap. And, to Luke's point, like in the over 1.5, these guys have been pretty durable. And, outside of maybe a Marquez sub, I mean, Pitolo hits hard. I guess unless Marquez gasses super badly, which, we've seen in the last couple of fights, then Pitolo's back for a late finish. But I like the under 2.5 here, but I think I'm just going to ultimately pass here.
AJ, how about you?
I like your angle, John. I do think it's a dog or pass matchup. I just can't justify like Marquez being a favorite here. He hasn't fought since the summer of 2018. He's coming off a serious injury. It's not like stylistically he's got all these advantages. You brought up the guillotine. I guess it could happen, but it's like they're both basically brawlers. They both swing hard. They're both defensively flawed. I guess the thing that I would add with credence to Pitolo is everybody brings up the Cal and Potter fight, and that is a red flag. But I do think that there's merit to Pitolo performing better at 185 in terms of like his durability and just like how he actually looks. He doesn't gas as horribly. He actually like looks better technically. So I do think it is a dog or pass matchup. I think he is the underdog because people are kind of accustomed to the fact that this guy's lost the majority of his fights. The last time he got matched up with a prospect in IMPA, he lost. But Marquez is just a very flawed fighter. It's possible in this meantime he's improved, but the takedown defense is a huge red flag. His cardio isn't exactly great either, and he could be hurt, right? We saw him hurt by DiChirico. So they both throw heavy bombs, coconut bombs. But I do think that, even though they're both durable, I wouldn't be, I guess, shocked to see a finish happen here. So I do think it is truly a dog or pass matchup.
Yeah, agreed. See, how about you?
Pass.
Okay. He's going to pass the dog or pass. Next up, co-main event. We got Macy Barber, Alexa Grasso. Luke, take it away.
It was another fight, man, where I thought I would be playing Macy, but I know I'm probably going to be a little contrarian here because I know it looks like the large majority of the community is on Macy, which I understand, but I actually think that Alexa Grasso has a very good style to beat a girl like Macy Barber over the course of 15 minutes. But at the same time, I also still can't get the JJ Aldridge fight out of my head because that's also giving credence to my Grasso opinion, but Macy hits really hard for 125. I just feel like Alexa Grasso is the more active girl. She's the more technical striker. She has more tools, but what we have seen in WMMA over the years, it doesn't, that stuff doesn't necessarily always matter if there is a significant power threat or if there's a significant grappling threat. And here that may be the case with Barber. It's like, I don't necessarily know. I guess this is where I part ways with some people. I don't necessarily think that she can play that bull game against Grasso. I really don't. I feel like Grasso's footwork is better. I feel like she can play that outside game. She might lose the optics. I might be wrong on this one, but I feel like her volume is going to be better. She's going to be able to mix it up. I think she's going to make Macy Barber miss a lot. It just really comes down to me, does, Macy land that big shot? So instead, personally, I believe it's C. I think you have a play on this as well, or maybe Lags, but Barber by KO at plus 500, I think is the angle for Barber in this fight, in my opinion. That's not to say she can't win a decision. My angle is that if Barber is actually consistently being able to close distance, get off on these kind of strikes, despite Grasso being tough, in my opinion, I feel like Barber does have that anomalous type KO power where if she is able to do and implement that game that she has historically done, I think she's got a very solid chance of finishing Grasso. So instead of taking her on the money line, I'd rather take the flyer on the prop. But I'm more so on the side of Grasso just outpoints her over 15 minutes.
Lex, how about you?
Yep. So this is the second prop in my 3 props for me, and Luke brought it up. I have a quarter unit on a Barber KO at plus 500. So I think Luke started off great, and I thought that this fight is pretty binary. That it's either Grasso's going to be able to keep that range, utilize their crisper boxing, mix in those leg kicks to, minimize the explosiveness of Macy to close the distance, or Macy's going to be that bull style that Grasso struggles with. She close the distance, is just going to land those bombs. I think the latter is more likely because I favor the physicality and the aggression of Macy, but I like the flyer on Macy KO at plus 500 because, like you said, I could definitely see the path for Alexa to outstrike her for the 15 minutes.
AJ, how about you?
So the striking dynamic here kind of reminds me of the striking dynamic that we saw between Pantoja and Kopp. Kopp athleticism and power versus Pantoja more variety or better volume. I guess more aggression or better technique, I should say. It's hard to watch tape and not favor Grasso as a better technical striker. I just think she's much better defensively. Macy, she's young. Maybe this injury really fired her up and she comes back looking a lot better. It's certainly possible. But what tape tells me, she leaves her chin very high. Head movement can be much improved. Hands tend to drop, and she's very susceptible to counters. Luke brought up the J.J. Aldrich fight, which I think is kind of a similar dynamic here. I think that Grasso will be winning minutes, but again, Macy's athletic, powerful, blitzes often. Maybe she catches her with something, and that's able to swing the dynamic of the fight. But I do think that the aggregate of the striking exchanges will go in favor of Grasso. I just like her combinations better, her technique better, better defense. But it should be a fun fight.
Yeah, but yeah.
I played ends by knockout. I don't really think that I think Grasso's better just in general, but Macy does some things that are good for women's MMA. She moves forward, she's aggressive. I kind of think if you put her on her back foot, she's fucking horrendous. JJ Aldrich was pretty much beating her ass standing before she got hurt. I don't know how you could walk away from that fight and really be super confident in Macy, because I think Grasso is just a level above as a striker than JJ, and even defensively, she's much more sound. And even in that fight, I think Macy, she got hurt. So I don't think Grasso throws lights. So I just think a knockout's likely on either side. I mean, they're going to throw a lot of volume. So I think Grasso's the better defensive striker. Macy probably hits harder, yeah. But Grasso can hit. So I prefer ends by knockout rather than, just one side, Grasso or Macy. For a fight that's going to have this much volume, somebody's probably going out.
Yeah, so I played Barber a while back at plus 150. I honestly think she should be a slight favorite, to be honest. So I don't disagree that Grasso is the better, more technical fighter, but in WMMA, I tend to lean towards volume, power, physicality, and finishing upside. Macy's one of the few girls in this division who can match Grasso on volume. She's going to go forward. She has elite power for women's 125. I'll put it this way. If Grasso has the ability to just stick on the outside for 15 minutes and avoid big exchanges and avoid the clinch, then she's going places in the division. Not many women in WMMA can do that. My own opinion is that at some point, or probably in every round, you're going to see big exchanges in the pocket or Barber find the clinch. Now, it's not to say Grasso can't land hard in those exchanges. She can. Like, I agree with C. I think she's a decent hitter for WMMA as well. But I do think Barber's going to end up matching her on volume, and I do skew her way when it comes to finishing upside. Given she's probably going to be the one on the front foot as well, that always looks good optics-wise. And if she can find the clinch, I think she's going to destroy Grasso there personally. Again, I'm not favoring her big by any means. Like, if it turns out Grasso just puts a striking clinic on her, I won't be surprised. But when in doubt, I'm willing to err on the side of physicality. And AJ touched on it a bit. Barber's 23 years old. This is a girl I think you can reasonably expect to be making, big adjustments from fight to fight. I do think she's probably the better grappler, both like submission grappling wise, and probably the better wrestler. Though, given how she's fought in the past, I doubt, she's going to be looking to take this fight down too much. But ultimately, I think it's going to be a high volume, high variance fight. I slightly lean Barber on the power, but just, plus 150 where I got it. I like it a lot. Frankly, any plus money I think on Barber you can justify a play on. But yeah, I mean, I'm higher on her than most. We saw something like Jessica Andrade win a title on nothing but, go forward and throw bombs and attempt takedowns. She's even more defensively responsible than Maycee Barber is, which, to be clear, I'm not saying Maycee Barber is the next Jessica Andrade, just kind of a point that, there is, kind of a prototype for what Barber is and what Barber looks to do here. And like I said, if it turns out Grasso can just stick and move for 15 minutes, I'm going to be very, very, very impressed with her and her trajectory. So with that, we move on to the main event of the evening. This is exciting, and I'm already getting a little sick about how much money I have on this fight. It's I think everybody's got something to say about it, so I'll leave the actual technical analysis to you guys. I'll touch on a few things here. Namely, in some respects, this reminds me a bit of Kattar and Holloway. And by that, I mean, if you looked at Kattar and Holloway, it was very easy to look at Kattar and say, he's the bigger hitter. He's probably just going to be able to win this on power. But looking at the numbers of that fight, to me at least, it seemed fairly clear that Holloway was going to outland him substantially. And I mentioned that on here. And I kind of feel similarly about this, to be honest. Like, you look at their careers, and it's like, I don't see a statistical advantage for Burns anywhere here. Usman's been outlanded at distance once in his entire career against Leon Edwards. He outlanded Jorge Masvidal at distance. He outlanded Sean Strickland at distance. Outlanded Rafael dos Anjos at distance. He at distance, he outlands his opponents by 1.3 significant strikes per minute, as opposed to Burns by 0.3. Burns, we've seen have issues with Olivier Aubin-Mercier. They were even on distance strikes. He was outstruck at distance by Kunchenko. Gunnar Nelson and him were basically even at distance. You saw Gunnar win minutes there as well. And so ultimately, it's like, you can make a case for Burns standing, but I don't really think it's backed up by the data, nor do I think Burns making a substantial jump at 170 is really backed up by the data either. In fact, his metrics at 170 have been almost identical to his metrics at 155 pounds. I'm just going to say this, and I'm probably going to piss some people off. Burns is a good fighter. He is not an elite fighter. There's virtually nothing to suggest that he's an elite fighter outside of, he's got great jiu-jitsu, no question. These two guys put on a gi, Burns submits him, no question about that. But it's a cage fight. They're not putting on a gi here. Burns had a very close fight with Gunnar Nelson where he was controlled on the fence for 5 minutes of that fight, nearly a full round. He had a very close fight with Kunchenko. He had a very close, well, I wouldn't say close to Aubin-Mercier, but like I said, Aubin-Mercier was able to have success. Obviously he knocked out Maia, but that was a perfect matchup for him. Where his other two knockouts were in his career? Jason Sago and Dan Moret. So it's like, I think Burns has power, but I even think that's overstated. And in fact, Usman has had more knockdowns in his career than Burns has. I think Usman's better everywhere. Do I think he's going to try to wrestle Burns? Probably not. But I think there's plenty of evidence to suggest he can clinch him on the fence and hold him there for as long as he wants. We saw him get outlanded badly in the clinch against Kunchenko too. For Burns to win this fight, he probably has to be at range. And obviously, the kicks are a huge weapon for him. But even that, if he starts kicking Usman's leg, he's probably going to take the range away and just push him to the fence. Basically what I'm getting at, Usman, you look at his career, Usman is probably, if other than maybe Khabib, the most dominant force we've ever seen in the UFC. He just hasn't had a close fight outside of the Covington fight where he just decided to strike for 25 minutes. Burns is a good fighter, but Burns doesn't have a win even close to the quality of Colby Covington, Rafael dos Anjos, or Jorge Masvidal. It's just a fact. Generally, like I said, the metrics dramatically favor Usman as it is. Generally, when you take steps up in competition, you tend to regress. Usman's got insane metrics against the best comp in the world. Burns has okay metrics against good comp. I just think Usman's got him covered anywhere here. I think he's going to outland him with relative ease at distance. I think the reach is going to be a problem. Burns may be a speed advantage, but yeah, I think he's going to outland him at distance. I think he can clinch him pretty much whenever he wants here. Maybe Burns can get a takedown or two, but I'd be fairly surprised if he can hold him on the mat. We'll see, but to me, Usman's the best fighter in the history of the sport and certainly the best fighter alive right now. And Gilbert Burns is good. Is good justified 30% implied against the most dominant force we've seen in MMA? I don't think so, really. So I've got 6 units on Usman minus 235. I'm very confident in it. And if I'm wrong, look, you guys know me. I'm willing to take my lumps for it, but that's my view. Luke, how about you?
Yeah, so I think we're all going to talk about this fight in some regard. So I'll try to keep it brief as possible. I guess there's a couple fights that I just want to hit on that I guess prove credence to me more so for Usman outside of stats, outside of a lot of other things as well. But I mean, if you even go back and look at the Tractor Pazerish fight, getting outlanded there, a guy who's going to push a pace. Rashid Magomedov is a guy who's going to push a pace. John talked about it. Gunnar Nelson, not the most physically imposing guy historically, goes out there, actually wins in the clinch, pushes a pace, slows down Burns over the course of 3 rounds. And I guess that's my real big thing here, is that I feel like the one thing that people are just completely throwing out the window is the fact that this is a 5-round fight. And a guy in Usman who has went 5 rounds multiple times. We have a guy in Burns who has went 5 rounds once. Who was that against? Tyron Woodley. But like, oh, we can sit there and have the conversation about Tyron Woodley, but at the end of the day, Tyron Woodley did nothing in that fight. So when we're talking about, once again, a 5-round narrative of a guy who's actually going to push an unreal pace outside of what we're even seeing on tape, look at what we're looking at in terms of stats. That's just an entirely different ball game of what favors Usman here. Burns is not holding up. If you look at fights where he has been pushed, he has 7.5 to 10 minutes of gas. That is all he has. So I'm sorry, but this narrative that Burns can come out here and win a decision, I think is crazy to me. And second hot take, Burns is not subbing Usman, in my opinion. I would be very shocked, actually, if he subbed Usman. It's one of these scenarios where you have a really strong wrestler versus a very strong grappler, where the strong wrestler beats the strong grappler 3 out of every 4 times. I'm very happy and content in saying that as well. And then you even bring up the striking consideration. I think that's actually more so for Burns, at least in terms of his win condition. It has to come early. Usman pushes a different kind of a pace. Burns is not going to be able to have extended success here. In my opinion, he's going to have to land something on Usman early to drastically alter the course of this fight. This is probably one of my more confident takes I've had on this podcast. You must think, oh, Luke, you're talking about your confident take on your, minus 275 favorite, screw you. But I don't know, man. I just don't understand a lot of the Burns takes here. I think if you're playing him, I think you're playing him inside the distance or you're playing him KO. I think it's a great spot for Usman. Dude's just a different animal.
Lags, how about you?
Yep, and to roll out my prop article, I have Usman by rounds 4 or 5 or decision. I have 2 units on that at plus 105. And just to keep it fair, I broke it down kind of, since we talk about how Usman's fighting style was so elite, I kind of went over Burns' path to victories, if any, in the fight. So decision. I don't really see him outworking or outpacing Usman. We've never really seen him land over 90 significant strikes, even in a 5-round fight with Tyron Woodley, who wouldn't throw anything back at him. Could he submit him here? I don't think so, because, even if Kamaru's able to or wants to take it to the ground, I think he will be defensively responsible there. But I think he'll, just be fine striking at distance and pushing him up against cage. And then the KO, I kind of think that's his only path to victory, but I think it's early is his best path to victory, first round, second round. So other than that, like you guys touched on, I think Usman rolls through a decision here and possibly even finishes him late. And then I also have 2 units. Sorry, I have 2 units Usman parlayed with Curtis Blades as well at minus 115.
AJ, how about you?
Yeah, so I max bet Usman at like minus 240, I believe. When I'm max betting a fighter, I kind of just like to see if they could check every single box. And I think Usman pretty much does, outside of just purely jiu-jitsu, which I think you mentioned, John. Yeah, sure, if these guys throw on a gi, Burns is the better grappler there. But he doesn't have the wrestling advantage here. Usman's never been taken down in the UFC. He's more physical than Burns. And I just don't think that Burns has the cardio to go out there and take down Usman many times. Even if he gets under his hips once, Usman's just going to scramble back up, and he's a black belt himself. So I'm saying that I'm on Usman, obviously, but I want to, I guess, see both sides of the argument here. And I think the only way Burns does win is by clipping Usman with a punch early. We've seen in the Covington fight, Usman can be hurt. He doesn't have the best head movement. and maybe jumping on a sub or knocking him out. Other than that, we know who the better minute winner is here. Usman's better in the clinch. He's a better wrestler. He's got much better cardio. My big takeaway with the Woodley fight was like, yeah, Burns dominated, but he needed many pauses there. Like he was not constantly working. We know Usman will constantly work foot stomps, body shots in the clinch, and even in open space. He's more technical than Burns. He's got the reach. He could switch stances on you. Burns' technical striking, I'd say, has gotten better through the years, but he could still go through phases of being wild. Usman's just got better volume, defense. I think he does have the power advantage, to your point, John. So yeah, Burns' main way to win is kind of winning within that 7.5 to 10 minute mark that Luke said. So, and I just think that the clinch of Usman, I don't think Usman's going to take him down like early, but as Burns fatigues and Usman's like working him in the clinch, I think that's when Usman will finally be able to take him down, as he'll not be a big threat from Burns' guard. So I agree with a lot of what you guys said. I think that there are a lot of strong opinions here because this is a headliner and a pay-per-view, and just like we saw last card and even cards in the past, people just want to have those hot takes. But yeah, stylistically, I think it's a great fight for Usman.
Yeah, agreed. See, how about you?
Yeah, I'm not. I think Usman's like pretty clearly the value. If you got in minus 225, minus 230, those opening lines, you're probably going to beat the line by $1.25, maybe more. Expect just Usman money to just kind of continue to come in. But yeah, I mean, with Usman, between Usman and Gilbert, there's a pretty large sample size. So, there's hypotheticals in terms of, I guess, what path does Burns have? I see leg kicks in the comments. I see people talking about that. But with this large of a sample size, you have a pretty good indication of how this fight's going to play out. And it's probably going to be 24 minutes of Usman grinding him against the cage and getting a 50-45 three ways. I think with Burns, people are playing Burns. I guess the question is like, how often, with somebody who doesn't win minutes, who can't really win minutes in this fight, how often, do you clip him versus somebody who has historically been A+ durability outside of the Kobe fight? He got hurt. I don't even know. Was he hurt? I mean, he just got hit. So it's like, what are the odds that happens? How do you justify playing Burns at plus 225? I don't know. I don't think you can get to that number. I think you probably need like plus 400 to play Burns. I just, if somebody can't win minutes and they're going up against someone who has a significant cardio advantage, just doesn't click in my mind how you could hit plus 225 and think there's any type of value there. Because most of the comments are like he's gonna not, he'll knock Usman out. But like when you're assessing like the probabilities of this, you're not coming up with that outcome at plus 225. You're not getting any value there. So, but yeah, I mean, I think Usman 4-5 decision, good. He hits harder. He's more durable, and Usman's going to take the path of least resistance. And I think Masvidal's was much more dangerous of a fighter than Burns is, at least standing. Just my opinion, but it's how I feel.
Yeah. I think what you touched on with sample size is really the big thing too. It's like, they both got 15 fights in the UFC. Not, Burns is 34, Usman's 32. Not a whole lot is changing about their games at this point. And just one last thing with the durability of Usman, like we've seen him get cracked by Worley Alves. We've seen him get cracked by Woodley. Even Colby, Colby caught him clean a couple times, but it's not like he backed up and shelled up. He kind of just stepped back in the pocket. And so, yeah, Burns could clip him and knock him out. That could definitely happen, but I'm not betting on it. So, yeah, that's the show tonight. Follow or fade. If you're on Burns, good luck. I hope you lose because I will lose a fuckload of money. But yeah, we'll see what happens. AJ, I want to thank you for coming on tonight. Guys, go follow him on Twitter at AJMMA. Puts a lot of great content out there, writes up all his bets in advance. As usual, like I said at the beginning, if you want to join Bet Online and you haven't yet, you get 50% added to your first deposit up to $1,000 with the promo code CLUBSUB. And please, if you guys like the show, please drop a like and subscribe. It would do a lot for us. We'd really appreciate it. And thanks for coming out. As usual, I'm John at MMA Fox, Luke at SWR_betting, Lags at Lags_the Capper, and C at C Hansen 10. Thanks, guys. Take it easy.